Hey, what's up, nerds? Welcome back to Guys That Magic. It is Shane, and I'm joined by Riley. Say what up.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm very excited. We're getting into our $100 upgrades. You had the privilege to upgrade the Sultai Arisen. I can't wait to hear about this deck, Riley. We're going to go over the $100 upgrade for the face commander. If you're interested in the backup commander, that'll be over on our Patreon. The link will be down in the description there. Check it out. But we're focused on the face commander, like I said. So without further ado, let's just jump into the face commander, talk about what it does and what the deck wants to do.
Yeah, so straight out of the box, it's supposed to be helmed by Kotis Sibsig Champion. This is black, green, blue for a 3/3 legendary creature, zombie warrior. It says once during each of your turns, you may cast a creature spell from your graveyard by exiling 3 other cards from your graveyard in addition to paying its other costs. So basically, your creature is going to have like an escape, if you're familiar with that mechanic. And then the other part of this card says whenever one or more creatures you control enter, if one or more of them entered from the graveyard or was cast from a graveyard, put 2+1/+1 counters on Kotis. So this is a commander that has some reanimation as well as like some go big +1/+1 counters themes.
Sounds like you're going to really care about things going in that graveyard, which means your opponents aren't going to have a good time. I'm feeling like this is going to be scary.
Um, I think this will be fun. I don't
Okay.
think that this is like the craziest, most dedicated graveyard deck, but at the same time, there's a lot of cool things that you could do with this ability.
All right. Well, don't keep me waiting. Let's talk about some of your additions you're putting in this bad boy.
Yeah, so the first two cards we're going to talk about, fun little thing with our commander is that our commander puts 2+1/+1 counters on itself whenever a creature comes into play from a graveyard. That doesn't mean we actually have to cast it from a graveyard. So anytime we just have like creature recursion, it's going to grow our commander. So these first two creatures are actually going to dedicate themselves specifically to that role. The first card here is Prized Amalgam. This is 1 blue and a black for a creature zombie. It's a 3/3 and it says whenever a creature enters the battlefield, if it entered from your graveyard or you cast it from your graveyard, return Prized Amalgam from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped at the beginning of the next end step. This is really cool because it's actually staggering that time as to when it is those things are going to be going back to the battlefield. So anytime you recurse something, this will come back with it later on, and then this will put a total of 4+1/+1 counters on your commander.
That's synergy. I
Pretty
like
good
it.
there.
I like it. Yeah.
Also, Bloodghast, 2 black for a 2/1 vampire spirit. It can't block and it has haste. That's basically flavor text. It says whenever one or more of your opponents has 10 or less life. But it does have a landfall ability, which is pretty powerful. And that landfall ability says that whenever a land you control enters, you may return this card from the graveyard to the battlefield. So just play magic, play lands. This acts as a wonderful sacrifice fodder piece for you because it's just going to come back. And then, like I mentioned beforehand, this just puts 2+1/+1 counters on your commander every time it does.
Just the gift that keeps on giving. Yeah. This card's nuts and graveyard shenanigans.
Yeah. Next couple of creatures that we're going to go over. Obviously, we're a graveyard deck. I want to be able to put cards into my graveyard and be able to reanimate cards from said graveyard. And to help us out with this strategy are a couple of creatures that are all going to make us and our opponents sacrifice a couple of things. So we are going to be playing Fleshbag Marauder. This is 2 and a black for a 3/1 zombie warrior. Accursed Marauder is 1 and a black for a creature zombie warrior. It's a 2/1. And the way that these work is that whenever either of these creatures were to enter the battlefield, each player, including yourself, have to sacrifice a creature. Accursed Marauder says non-token, which is kind of an additional upside there. So you're going to sack, they're all going to sack. That's totally fine. It fuels your graveyard so that you could use these cards later on, exile them out to bring back another creature. Or if you do want to bring these back, they just put themselves potentially in the graveyard if you wanted to sacrifice them.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we're actually not done with that though. I've got more I've got more on the docket. So I'm also putting in Plague Crafter. Didn't mention this one with the other two because his ability is a little bit different. He's 3 mana for a 3/2 human shaman. Says whenever he enters, each player sacrifices a creature or a planeswalker, and then each player who can't discards a card. So this kind of punishes your opponents in the case they don't have anything to sack.
Yeah, which is lame because you're like, oh, I got around it. No, just kidding. I never get around it. You never get around it.
Never get around it.
These next couple seem to have a theme that I'm not liking. When are you talking to me about these?
Yeah, turns out the theme, well, the theme is sacrifice. The theme is Phyrexian. The theme is pain.
Yeah.
Um, the first one here is Shieldred Whispering one. This is 7 mana, so it's 5 and 2 black. It is kind of steep. It's a legendary creature praetor. It's a 6/6 with Swamp Walk, which is very relevant in this Precon cycle, considering we're playing in 3-color decks. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, you return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, which helps to trigger our commander. And it also says at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature. And the really cool thing here being is that if we do kill off one of their creatures and maybe reanimate a card from their graveyard later on, it still triggers our commander. We don't care what graveyard we're pulling from.
That's crazy. I didn't realize that.
And then also joining this Shieldred is another Shieldred. This one is actually just Shieldred. No additional title or anything like that. This is one of the Flip Praetors. So this one is 3 and 2 black for a 4/5 legendary creature, Phyrexian Praetor. It's got Menace, and it says whenever it enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature or a planeswalker. So if they are more of like a go-wide strategy, this penalizes that as well. And then where this card gets really nasty is that we can pay 5 mana to exile this, and then return to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. Activate only as a sorcery and only if an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard. So there's a little bit of a stipulation on that. But whenever we do this, it comes back to the battlefield as an enchantment saga, the True Scriptures. On the first lore counter for this, it says for each opponent, destroy up to 1 target creature or planeswalker that player controls. So immediately, this is going to be 3 creatures that we are going to be just removing, which is fantastic for us. If that doesn't deal with our opponents, the second lore counter says each opponent discards 3 cards and then mills 3 cards. The milling 3, that's just nice and cute, but discarding 3 is really steep. And then lastly, in the case we're really not bringing on the punishment, the final mode on this for 3 lore counters says put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control, and then you exile this, returning it to the battlefield transformed, so it comes back as Shieldred, which then makes your opponents also sacrifice something.
Card is so unbelievably mean, and I love it in this build.
Yeah, it's a bit of a hefty cost in order to get it to flip, but if it does manage to flip, this is a nightmare to deal with.
Yeah. And then your commander, if it's on the field, is growing when all this is happening. Like, that's crazy. I love it. I hate it. All right, no more Shieldreds. Talk to me about these next couple, though.
Yeah, we do have a couple more creatures in the list. The next 2 are basically just going to be like, I'm going to call them like lieutenants. They're essentially like backup commanders. The first one here is Muldrotha, the Gravetide. It is 3, a black, a green, and a blue. For 6, you get a 6/6 legendary creature, elemental avatar. And it says during each of your turns, you may play a land and cast a permanent spell of each permanent type from your graveyard. So this not only helps to make sure that we get our creatures back, triggering our commander, but it also helps to make sure just we get all of our goodies back if we want to.
Yeah, you're more kidding. They're literally another commander you could be playing with.
Yeah. And then also here we have Winter, Cynical Opportunist. This is 2, a black, and a green for a 2/5 with Death Touch. It says whenever it attacks, you mill 3 cards, which is wonderful. That helps to turn on our commander's ability to just be able to bring creatures back. And then this also has Delirium. It says that at the beginning of your end step, you may exile any number of cards from your graveyard with 4 or more different card types from among them. If you do, you put a permanent card from among them onto the battlefield with a finality counter on it. Now, yes, they are going to reanimate. That'll trigger a commander, of course. They do come back with a finality counter, which is a little bit of a downside there, but still pretty powerful effect.
Yeah, Winter, I remember when he first came out, he was a little underwhelming, but I saw you pilot this guy as a commander, and that he could do some work, so seeing him in this deck is kind of scary.
He won my heart over.
Yeah, kind of like him. We're going from something kind of scary to something kind of cute. What is this?
You said kind of cute until we can eventually start to take advantage of this. This is Spore Frog. A single green mana for a creature frog. It's a 1/1 that says sacrifice it to prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. The reason why this card is in this deck, and the reason why I think that this one's actually kind of surprisingly nasty, is not only can it sacrifice itself to make sure that we always have something in the grave, but with our commander, we can continue to bring this back and potentially just wipe out one of our opponent's ability to kill us via combat damage.
Yeah, it's cute looking, but I've seen this loop played out in real time many times, and kind of just mean.
It doesn't help us to win the game, but it will most certainly help us to not lose it.
Well, keep this train rolling. What else you got?
More creatures, but the kind of cool thing that all of these have in common is that each of these creatures are going to be from this set. So there was a lot of high synergy. I am so happy that we waited for the full spoilers to get released for this, because there's so many really good cards that want to just slot into this. The first of which being Sidisi, Regent of the Mire. This is 1 and a black for a legendary creature, Zombie Snake Warlock. It's a 1/3 that you can tap it, sacrifice a creature you control with mana value of X other than Sidisi. It says return target creature card with mana value of X +1 from your graveyard to the battlefield and activate only as a sorcery. This is reanimation that all we have to do is sacrifice a creature, which we want to be doing anyways.
Yeah. This guy's gonna go crazy in the deck. It's a graveyard pod.
Yeah, it's Graveyard Pod. This card is so good.
Super good.
Up next, we have Naga Fleshcrafter. This is 3 and a blue for a creature snake shapeshifter. It is a 0/0, but it says it enters the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield. So you can target your opponent's biggest scary thing, and you get a copy of that. That's really cool and really powerful, but the reason why I like this card is because of its second ability. It has a renew for 2 and a blue, where you can exile this card from your graveyard. You put a +1/+1 counter on target non-legendary creature that you control, and then each other creature you control becomes a copy of that creature until end of turn. That is also an activate only as a sorcery, but you could pick your opponent's big scary thing, and now all of your creatures are that big scary thing. You get to swing in, and you'll probably just end somebody with this.
Yeah, I really liked this card when it was spoiled. Big fan here.
Another one that I think we were all pretty high on whenever this got spoiled. This is Rot Curse Rakshasa. This is a 1 and a black for a creature demon. It's a 5/5 with both trample and decayed. And the decayed here is really not a bad thing because we want things in our graveyard anyway, so I don't care if this dies. Also, this has renew for X and 2 black, where we can exile this card from our graveyard and put a decayed counter on each of up to X target creatures. Activate only as a sorcery. This allows us to push in for damage because creatures that are decayed cannot block, and whenever those creatures attack, they're going to die at the end of that combat, which is really cool because now it helps to kind of like act as a pseudo board wipe with a little bit of a timer on it.
Yeah, there's literally nothing bad on this card or this deck.
Yep.
I remember Hunter mentioned, like you just mentioned too, it's a bit of a delayed board wipe, but there's so many mind games in it because you put these on my creatures. Now I'm just like, well, I don't want to attack anymore. Can't block. Like, what do? You're just like in some weird holding pattern.
Take damage.
I guess you just take it. Yeah.
Karu Goldkeeper is up next. This is 1 a black, a green, and a blue for a creature dragon. It's a 3/3 with flying and says whenever 1 or more cards leave your graveyard during your turn, you create a treasure token. I love this effect. I love the treasure mechanic here. It comes in untapped, which I think is really cool. We can repeat this. I don't know. I love everything about this. It just synergizes so well with our commander. And then it has a renew where we can pay 2 a black, a green, and a blue and exile this card from our graveyard. We put 2 +1/+1 counters and a flying counter on target creature. It says activate only as a sorcery, but realistically speaking, this is a way to be able to give our commander some evasion, and our commander can get really big as is. So those extra 2 +1/+1 counters, it's going to be pretty scary.
I love the fact that you could use this over and over because you are going to be a recursion deck, but then maybe at the end of the game you're like, I don't need to recur this anymore. I'm just going to go over the top and win now. Like, it's very flexible in your deck.
Yeah, and then the last card from the set that we're going to be throwing in here, at least the last new creature from this set, is Lotus Light Dancers. This is 2 a black, a green, and a blue for a creature zombie bard. It is a 3/6 with lifelink, and it says whenever this creature enters, search your library for a black, green, and blue card. Put those cards into your graveyard, then shuffle. We like to reanimate. And us being able to just tutor for whatever we want to put into the graveyard is super powerful.
Big time. The fact that this is not stipulated to like a type, it's just the color. So good, dude.
Yeah, not just that, but this also kind of like really puts our opponents in really weird situations because now if they want to attack, we can block with this, have it potentially die, and then recur it, which this is an ETB. This isn't a cast, so we can go grab 3 more things.
This is a fantastic addition in the deck.
Yep.
All right, I think that was the last of the creatures, like you mentioned. Talk to me about some non-creature spells now.
So this deck, I'm not going to lie, it is very creature heavy. We don't have a whole lot as far as non-creatures go, but we do have a couple. The first of which, also a brand new card, but this was actually included in a different Precon. But I just felt like it synergized so well here, I wanted to include it as well. So this is Will of the Absan, and this is 3 and a black for a sorcery. It says choose one, but if you control your commander as you cast a spell, you may choose both instead. It says any number of target opponents each sacrifice a creature with the greatest power among creatures that player control, and they lose 3 life. So this just gets rid of something for your opponents. And then past that, it also says return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, which is just extra for us.
Yeah, whoa, whoa, whoa. We're Sultai, not Abzan. What's going on here?
You know what? Turns out, I guess the Abzan are doing what the Sultai want.
Really good card, though.
And then we also have, for a single black mana, Reanimate. It's a sorcery. It says put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. You lose life equal to its mana value. We can grab something from ours and trigger our commander. We can grab something from our opponents and trigger our commander. So lots of powerful stuff and lots of flexibility with this.
Yeah, if you don't have the biggest threat, you know what? You have the biggest threat. I'm going to take yours.
Yep. And then suddenly we have the biggest threat.
Yeah. What else you got?
We have one artifact, one enchantment, and one land making this list. So the one artifact, I'll start with that one. It is Altar of Dementia. For 2 mana, it's an artifact that says sacrifice a creature. Target player puts a number of cards equal to the sacrificed creature's power from the top of their library into the graveyard. This is a pretty powerful card with this deck because not only can we self-mill, at a certain point, we may actually kind of use this a little bit more aggressively and potentially mill some of our opponents out if we can't get through with combat damage.
I would hate that.
The enchantment that we're going to be putting in here is Animate Dead. This is 1 in a black for an enchantment that says whenever you play it, you choose a target creature card in any graveyard, and whenever this enchantment comes into play, you put that creature into play, and then Animate Dead becomes an enchantment aura that is then enchanted to that creature. The enchanted creature gets -1, -0, and if Animate Dead would leave play, you sacrifice the creature. It's a really weird card. Basically, this is just 2 mana. We're going to grab something. It gets a minor debuff, but that's totally fine. And then same thing, we can grab any creature. So if we have the big scary thing, let's do that. And if we don't, we'll take your big scary thing.
The most convoluted text box just to get the point across that you're taking something out of the graveyard.
Yep.
Good card, good though.
And lastly, this is a 3-color deck. I wanted a little bit of just like fixing. Sadly, this is not actually the card that I originally wanted to throw in here, but I mean, it's a much cheaper version of this kind of an effect. And this is Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth. It's a legendary land. It says each land is a forest in addition to its other land types. Now, sorry, we couldn't have thrown an Urborg in here. That's just way more expensive. But this still helps to make sure that we're going to be hitting colors to fix up a little bit. There are a couple of different just colorless lands in this deck. And with us being 3 colors, I felt like it was a little stretched.
Hey, maybe with a bigger budget, you'll be able to fit Urborg in because both those cards would be fantastic in the deck. And is that going to do it for your additions?
That is going to do it for the additions, yeah.
Right on. Well, we got to the point now where you added all these cool cards. Oh, we got to make room for them. So why don't you walk through some of the cards that you're cutting to make room for all the stuff you're adding?
So this was a deck that is a little, I don't want to say polarizing, but it's very evident that there's 2 themes present. The first of which working primarily with our commander, Kotis. And then the second theme really doesn't care about him at all, which I felt to be kind of odd. And the second theme is Landfall, which is cool, but it's not really what we're playing here. So a lot of the cards that we're going to be removing are more focused around that theme. The first card that we're going to be cutting is Avenger of Zendikar. This is 7 mana for a creature elemental. It's a 5/5. Whenever it enters, you create a 0/1 plant for each land you control. And whenever you play a land, you put a +1/+1 counter on each plant you control. It creates an instant army for you. This is a really good target. If it does get removed, that we can just reanimate. It builds an instant board for us and then helps to make that board big. But coming in at 7 mana and our commander doesn't actually like cheat things into play. It just allows us to recast. This isn't a landfall deck. We don't really care about that. So I just felt like this was kind of an odd include.
Yeah, I feel that. This card is definitely one that you want to get out as many lands as you can in one turn and, like you said, buff your board up. But
Yeah.
the cut makes sense.
Lord of Extinction, Wizards of the Coast, please stop printing this card. This is 3 a black and a green for a creature elemental. It's a star, and it says this creature's power and toughness are equal to the number of cards in all graveyards. This is a big dumb beater. Now, this creature specifically, yes, this thing is likely going to be massive. My problem here being is that even if this is a 40/40, it still gets chump blocked. It really doesn't do anything past that point for us. I could have kept this in this list just to try and work with like Altar of Dementia to like, really turn on the gas, but we have another creature that has the ability to grow too, so I just didn't think that they were both included or both necessary or even wanted in this list.
Yeah. You need some kind of evasion.
Lord of the Forsaken is 4 and 2 black for a creature demon. It's a 6/6 with flying and trample. You can pay a black mana and sacrifice another creature. Target player mills 3 cards. You can also pay 1 life and add a colorless, and then you can spend that mana only to cast spells from your graveyard. This is a very powerful effect. I actually do like this creature, but same kind of thing. I just felt like there were new cards that I wanted to play around with a little bit more that came out from the set. Coming in at 6 mana, this one is a little bit more on the expensive side. It's still definitely a cool card, and if you're not planning on putting in all the new includes that I've got, this is, I would say, one of the 2 that I would probably put back into the deck.
Yeah, that makes sense. You gotta put the new shiny toys in.
Yep. Multani Yavamaya's avatar is 4 and 2 green. For 6 mana, you get a 0/0 legendary creature elemental avatar. It's got reach and it has trample. It gets +1/+1 for each land you control and each land in your graveyard. So this obviously, yes, this is a big dumb beater, but this one does have an ability to push damage through, and it's also got reach, which is kind of nice considering your opponents are probably going to be playing around with a lot of dragons for the foreseeable future. It has an ability in which you can pay 1 and a green to return 2 lands you control to their owner's hand, and then return this card from your graveyard to your hand. If that recursion put it back into the battlefield, this would have stayed in the deck, but because it just puts it back in my hand, it's not proccing my commander. It doesn't really care about that. And then outside of that, this is really just a big creature.
Yeah, it's unfortunate it doesn't go back on the field.
Necropolis Fiend is 9 mana for a creature demon. It's a 4/5. It does have Delve. It's got flying. And it has another ability where you can pay X, tap it, and exile X cards from your graveyard. Target creature gets -X/-X until end of turn. This is a deck that desperately needs a graveyard. So if we are delving to get this thing in play, which, to be honest, we're probably going to have to, we're cannibalizing our strategy. And then this ability also exiles to kill a single thing. Like, this is just way too much.
Yeah, this is completely destroying your graveyard.
This is like a massive panic button for me to like take myself out of the game and hopefully delay the inevitable.
Yeah. Nuking your strategy. Yeah, I don't like this card.
Obnixilis the Fallen, really cool landfall card. It is 5 mana for a 3/3 legendary creature demon. It's got landfall whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control. You may have target player lose 3 life, and if you do, you also put 3 +1/+1 counters on Obnixilis. He grows. He kind of drains. This isn't a landfall deck. This is going to happen once per turn in this list. Really cool if we have a bunch of like play extra lands or something, if we were actually dedicated to a landfall, but we're not.
Yep, I see a theme here. You said landfall, get it out.
Yep. These next 2 creatures that are going to be getting the axe, I feel really bad for just because I don't like removing new cards. But I definitely felt like these 2 worked much better with the Dragon Commander versus the Con Commander. So the first of which is Steward of the Harvest. This is 3 and a green for a creature human druid. It's a 3/3, and it says whenever it enters, you exile up to 3 target land cards from your graveyard. It also says the creatures you control have all activated abilities of all lands exiled with this creature. It is such an incredibly unique and cool effect, and I would love to be able to put this card in like Omo, but this does nothing for me here.
Yeah, it's a bummer.
Pretty similar, we have Floral Evoker. This is 2 and a green for a 2/3 snake druid. It has landfall whenever a land enters whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control. You put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, and then you have an ability where you can pay a green to discard a creature card, return a target land card from the graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Same thing. We're not really doing a whole lot to help our strategy. Sure, we are discarding our creatures, but if we're discarding them, that means we still have to be able to pay for the mana cost to be able to get them back with our commander, and then we're also exiling out 3 cards. It's just generally going to be more effective if we use that as just like really annoying recursion or try to exploit it in some way rather than just like an alternative way for us to get creatures in play.
Yeah. Bummer that's a new card, but yeah, I feel that too, man. Put it in the landfall deck.
Yep. Genji the Midnight Sky is also going to be removed here. This is 3 and 2 black for a legendary creature, Dragon Spirit. It's 5/5 with flying and menace. It says whenever it dies, choose 1. Either each opponent discards 2 cards and loses 2 life, or put target non-dragon creature card from the graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. You lose 2 life. Full transparency, I had to make room. I actually really do like Genji. Genji is my favorite card that I removed and would be my first card that I put back in here if I wanted any other like modifications to this. It's a big cool dragon. It's got some evasion on top of that, and it also does synergize with our commander. I just wanted to play with new toys.
Hey, I completely understand that. And like you said, if people don't want to add every single one of your includes, like put the one back in. Easy
Yep.
peasy.
If anything, saves you money.
There you go.
Last creature that we're going to be cutting is Shigeki Jukai Visionary. It is 1 and a green for a legendary enchantment creature, Snake Druid. I almost said Snake Wizard. It's a 1/3, and it has an ability where you can pay 1 and a green to tap it and return it to its owner's hand. It says reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield, tap with the rest into your graveyard. So this does kind of help us to mill a little bit. It is something that's repeatable, but it'll tax you. And then it has an ability where if you want to, you can channel this away for 2x and 2 green. It says discard this card, return X, target non-legendary cards from your graveyard to your hand. Same kind of thing. It is recursion, but I don't feel like we really need to double down on recursion back to hand. It's a cool creature. Just same kind of thing. It's just it's not really. It's not for me.
It's not for the deck. How about that? You are the deck.
Yeah.
It looks like all the creatures you're cutting. What about some non-creatures?
Yeah, so non-creatures, we have a couple more that are going to be getting cut. The first of which being Afterlife from the Loam. This is 5 and 3 black. It is a sorcery with Delve, and it says for each player, choose up to 1 target creature that in that player's graveyard. Put those cards out of the battlefield under your control. They're zombies in addition to their other types. So it's cool. It is mass reanimation for potentially 4 things, assuming you still have all 3 of your opponents still left in the game. And that's really cool. But once again, this is a card that I'm never going to be able to cast this without Delve, and Delve is cannibalizing. Plus, I feel like this card oftentimes is just going to sit in my hand, and I'm going to wait for an opportune moment to play it, and it's just never going to come.
You're not wrong. Like the first thing I was thinking was, this card looks nuts on paper, but it just might not work out the way you think in a game.
Yeah. It's a big payoff, so it has a really high ceiling, and I do like that, but I also feel like this card has an abysmal floor.
Yeah.
Lethal Scheme. This one is 2 and 2 black for an instant. It has Convoke, so that's kind of cool. It says destroy target creature or planeswalker. Each creature that convoke the spell connives. Also really cool. This is 4 mana, naturally at least, for a single target destroy.
Yeah. I get that. You know, hey, you gotta make room for the good stuff. We're making room.
Yeah, this just isn't it. Tear Asunder. This is another card that I feel like gets reprinted all the time. This is 1 and a green for an instant in which it has a kicker where you can pay 1 and a black. It says exile target artifact or enchantment, and then if the spell was kicked, exile target non-land permanent instead. This is a cool card, but same kind of thing. In order for me to be able to do what I really want to be able to do, this 4 mana, it's just expensive.
Yeah, I mean, it's uncommon removal for a reason.
Speaking about removal, we are also going to be cutting one of the board wipes that came in this deck. This is Necromantic Selection. It is 4 and 3 black for 7 mana. You get a sorcery. It says destroy all creatures, then return a creature card, put it to a graveyard this way to the battlefield under your control. It's a black zombie in addition to its other colors and types, and then you exile Necromantic Selection. The reasons, there's more than one, but the reasons why I'm removing this card is because number one, this actually does not work with our commander. If this resolves, our commander is going to die. So I'm not getting anything back for reanimating here. And then second, this costs 7 mana. I don't like my board wipes to be that expensive. Realistically, I'm dead.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very expensive board wipe, dude.
I need my panic buttons to be way cheaper.
Well, because you want to be panicking. This is like, if you're casting this, you're very far behind.
Yep. Harrow, another card that's going to be removed. This is 2 and a green for an instant. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you have to sacrifice a land, and then you can search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield, and then shuffle. It's a cool card. Once again, love it for a land stack. Not the direction I'm going in. If you want to check out something that works better with this, we'll have the dragon at the helm of our other 100 up on our Patreon, and
Yeah.
Harrow works really well there.
There you go. Landfall, not so much in this one.
And then Forbidden Alchemy, also going to be getting a cut. This is 2 and a blue for an instant. It says, look at the top 4 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. It has a flashback cost of 6 and a black. I just felt like this deck does a pretty decent job of milling itself out. We don't really need the extra help. And then past that point, I'm probably never going to use the flashback on this just because it's so expensive.
You're not wrong. 7 mana, jeez.
The last sorcery here is Welcome the Dead. It is 4 mana, so 3 and a black for a sorcery that says draw 2 cards, then discard a card and lose 2 life. You create X, tapped 2/2 black zombie druid creature tokens, where X is the number of cards that were put into your graveyard from your hand or from your library this turn. And it has a flashback of 5 and a black, so you can do this twice. This is a cool card. I love the artwork for it. This is a cool card in that it's like it's doing a lot. But I feel like the more that I read this card, it's like it's like it does this and it does that and it does this and it does that, but none of them are actually impactful.
Yeah. A lot of text, not a lot of impact. We'll see.
Yeah.
You gotta make room for stuff, though. I understand. What else we cutting?
Up next, we're going to be cutting a card that I probably wouldn't be cutting from like any other deck. So kind of sad to see this one go, but it just doesn't really work here. It's Phyrexian Reclamation, a single black mana for an enchantment. It is 1 and a black where you can pay 2 life and return a creature card from their graveyard back to your hand. This card is such cheap recursion. I love this card, actually. I put this card in like every one of my black decks, but because it brings it back from the graveyard to my hand, I don't really need it here.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, and I get that it's a recursion piece for you, but yeah, with your commander really caring about entering from the graveyard, it's weird. It's weird.
Yeah.
And then you added a land. Did you cut any land to make room for it?
Yeah, go ahead and grill me down in the comments below. I think the magic number for most decks should be 36 lands. So Precons, for whatever reason, seem to come with 37. So we're cutting 2 because we added 1. So quick math tells me 36. The first one here being Darkwater Catacombs. It is a land that does absolutely nothing unless you pay 1 mana and tap it. Then it adds both a blue and a black. But I hate these lands. These are awful. They make me do a little bit of extra math. I have to tap them first. Otherwise, I'm going to pass my turn, and this is going to be like my open source of mana, and I'm not going to realize that I just don't have access to anything. And then also, Haunted Mire is going to be removed. This is a land that is both a swamp and a forest, but it always enters tapped. So just, I'm not a big fan of tapped lands. There are an abundance of them in this deck.
Yeah. And I feel like what you just said about that catacomb just hit me right in the heart, because that happens all the time, because I hate filter lands like this.
Yep.
Ugh. All right, cool. Well, hey, we made it. Is that all the cuts?
That is it.
Nice. Well, we gave you a $100 budget to upgrade this deck. What are we coming out to?
So this deck, at least as of the time of this recording, is coming out to $97.84. Now there are, I want to say, 6 cards from the set that I threw into this upgrade. So that price, don't hate me, it's probably going to change. Could go up, also could go down.
Yeah, I think that it probably go down, unless one of these cards just turns out to be an absolute all-star in standard. It'll probably come down.
Yep.
Cool. Well, do you have any final thoughts on this commander?
Yeah, I think this is really cool. I think it's a very well put together pre-constructed deck in general. This is a deck that I would recommend that you go and you pick up. It's not super complicated. There's no like crazy themes or anything, so I think it's pretty beginner friendly in that regard, and it is also something that kind of gives you a direction to build off of, either with the face commander or with the dragon. That's, I don't want to say necessarily straightforward, but it kind of points you in a direction. So I feel like this is pretty good for players who are just getting into the game.
Right on. Well, thank you for watching, and why don't you leave Riley a comment down below? Let them know what you thought of the deck. Did they miss something? Was there a card that you would have put in that they didn't? Leave us some feedback. Also, while you're down there, you can like the video if you liked it, subscribe to this channel. In the description, you'll find a link to the Mox Fields if you want to test this deck, check out the cards, play with them. It'll be down in the description. Also down in the description, you'll find a link to all of our social medias. If you'd like to follow us on there, please check it out. And lastly, you'll find a link to the Patreon. We mentioned that this is the Face Commander upgrade. If you want to see the Backup Commander upgrade, that's over on our Patreon. So follow that link, consider subscribing, and check it out. Speaking of Patreon, on the screen right now, these are all of our Patreon members. Thank you guys so much for supporting us extra. If you want to see what they're seeing, which is not here on YouTube, which includes, like I mentioned just now, the backup upgrades and then the backup gameplays, check out that link. And a special shout out to our Gains Indestructible tier, starting with Brian Ganella, Daryl Tripp,
Demarion Turner,
Doc Jerome,
Jimmy Ward,
Kevo,
Larry Killian, Thrifty PSGR,
Tim K. You guys are awesome. We appreciate all the love and support, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.
Peace.